There's really not a ton of difference between a deep meditative trance, somebody having a quote unquote mystical experience, somebody in a flow state, somebody having a psychedelic experience. Very similar things are happening in the brain. The knobs and levers being tweaked and tuned, tremendous overlap. The other thing that's important, there's a second line of development here at the same time, which has pointed out, Maslow noted, it was the first one to notice this. He went, wow, every successful person I've met, and he was studying successful people, seems to cultivate these non-ordinary states of consciousness to improve performance. What we're finding out now, and what Jamie and I bumped into, is this massive underground revolution that links all these people who don't think they have anything to do with each other, right? David Asprey biohackers, soccer moms with yoga practices, businessmen who are using EEG brainwave headsets, people going on meditation retreats, hippies and ravers at Burning Man on psychedelics. Like, no, these people don't even talk to each other. They don't even know they exist, but they're actually doing the same thing. Right. And they're doing it for really good reasons. This is the other thing that we've started to figure out, and it's really the key. A lot of things that are so important in the 21st century, things that are really fundamental, from healing psychological trauma, dealing with anxiety, depression, to all kinds of incredible possibilities, skills. Hard to train skills like collaboration, creativity, access to intuition and inspiration. Turns out we have been trying to train up skills when what we really need, and what the research consistently shows, and what everybody from the Navy SEALs to Google to all these people are discovering, is we need to be training up a state of mind.
So just stop for a minute, because that's important. So we're trying to train up skills rather than training up a state of mind. So let me naturally take on the skills.
Exactly. And let me give you concrete details. So we were lucky enough, by we I mean the Flow Genome Project, to take part in the Red Bull Creativity Project.
Tell us about
Red Bull Creativity Project, it was the largest meta-analysis of creativity ever done. Red Bull not only has athletes on their roster, they also have top creatives, artists, painters, photographers, dancers, whatever. It's in their best interest to make them more creative, right? Like, these are their athletes, these are their artists, they got to help. So they've got deep pockets, they undertook the largest meta-analysis of creativity ever done. Something like 35,000 studies they reviewed, hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and they came to two overarching conclusions. One, creativity is probably the most important quality today for success in the 21st century, right? It's just critical. And this is not just they're finding. IBM did a global study. They found the #1 quality in CEOs. Partnership for 21st Century says creative problem solving is the most important thing our kids need to thrive 21st century. Second thing the Red Bull Creativity Project discovered, and this is exactly what I'm repeating what you just figured out, is that we suck at training people to be more creative. We are terrible at it. Yeah. So here's what we now know, though. We now know, using cognitive technique, so let me put a word around this category that we're talking about, all these non-ordinary states of consciousness that I've lumped together. We, in trying to we didn't want to call them altered states, because people just think we're talking about drug experiences, and we're not, right? Like, we didn't want to use non-ordinary states of consciousness because it's a stupid term, right? So it's precise, but it's kind of stupid. So when we were with the Navy SEALs, the commander of SEAL Team 6, Rich Davis, used the Greek term ecstasis. It's actually the root of the word ecstasy, and it means an experience where we stand beyond our normal sense of self, so our normal sense of self disappears, and we are filled with intuition, inspiration, and information we wouldn't normally have access to. And we went, wow, that's perfect. That's a great definition. Let's use that. So we're talking about ecstasis, or ecstatic experiences, right? So that category. And what we know, flow is a great example, right? So one of the things that happens in flow neurobiologically, and this happens in all these states, is the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's right back here, deactivates, shuts down, gets quieter. And this is why your sense of self disappears, for example, in flow. This is where that selflessness comes from. Self is calculated all over the prefrontal cortex. Right. And when that network disintegrates, right, you can't create that calculation, your self vanishes, right? We've all had this experience. Mm-hmm. So it turns out when we have this experience in flow, creativity goes through the roof. There was this study in Australia where they took 43 people and they gave them the 9-dot problem. So 9 dots, you've seen this. Connect 9 dots with your pencil without 4 lines, right? You give this to people. Under normal conditions, 5% of the population gets it done in 10 minutes or less. Most of us can't do it, right? And that experiment, nobody could do it. And then they used transcranial magnetic stimulation to temporarily knock out the prefrontal cortex, induce an artificial flow state that lasted 20 to 40 minutes, and then they regave them the 9-dot problem, and 43% solved the problem in record time.
Wow!
That number works. We've done other work on creativity. Not great. We're starting on a much bigger project, but and that number is commiserate. That's what we see too. There's meditation studies that say as little as 4 days of meditation training, right? 4 one-hour sessions, you get a big spike in creativity. There's psychedelic research for microdosing, not even full doses, right? Microdosing, these tiny, can't even feel it. On average, they see a 200% spike in creativity. This is amazing. This is 2x, 4x, 5. These are big, huge, for a skill that is fundamental, that we can't access any other way, and you're suddenly getting step functions worth of change. This is really revolutionary. And the most important thing, and this is also the other thing that the studies are showing, is that it's not just that creative problem solving, decision making, things like that go up with these states. It's that they're specifically good for solving wicked problems, right? Wicked problems are those without the easy either or binary solutions, right. And they're often problems, as banal as traffic or as complicated as funding to the developing world, where you throw more money, time, and resources at them, and you create more problems, right? You add another lane to the freeway, you get more traffic. Development money can breed corruption, right? These are wicked problems, and we're bad at them. And more in the 21st century, especially our leaders, the leaders of companies that I talk to, the leaders of the Fortune 100 that I spend time with, this is all they're doing, right? They're solving wicked problems all day long. And what the studies consistently show is not only do these access to the non-ordinary states help us better solve these problems in the moment. This is really cool. This is research that came out of Harvard, and then Bill Torbert, who's the dean of the business school at Boston College, picked it up. So it turns out that access to these states over time moves you up the adult development scale. You become higher up. As you move up the development scale, as you know, you gain what Roger Martin used to call the opposable mind, right? You can see problems from multiple sides. You get more empathetic. You get more ethical. It's the traits we associate with wise. Bill Torbert discovered that the leaders in the top 2 categories of adult development, not only do they make better ethical decisions and create more creative decisions, they actually can. He looked at 500 managers, and he found that those 2 people who were in the upper development categories, first of all, they had 80% of the management roles. They represent 10% of the broader population, yet they hold 80% of the management roles. Wow. So they have the key jobs, and those in the key jobs were able to engineer total transformations in their companies in the past 4 years, meaning they massively improved their reputation, shareholder value, bottom line.
Amazing.
So consciousness, states of consciousness, it turns out, go straight to the bottom line.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.